One of the ways to define theological retrieval is simply drawing from the theological resources of the past and applying them to the theological needs of the present. And that can be kind of a trendy thing right now in some circles. A lot of people are talking about retrieval, and it seems to resonate with people. And there's always a danger of doing something just because it's trendy. But I think there's also a danger of rejecting something because it's trendy. And I think it's good to ask, why is this resonating with people right now? Why are people finding a lot of value in going back to the past and retrieving it today? And part of the answer to that is our culture, where we're at right now in the modern West. Because part of the ethos of modernity is a sense of emancipation from the past. And so I've found that going back to the great theologians of the past could almost function like food does to hunger for the theological needs of the moment. There's just so much that is back there that is well suited to help us navigate some of the challenges that we face today. And in the book, I talk about three benefits of theological retrieval, and I use the metaphors of going to school, traveling, and seeing a counselor. So going to school is just a metaphor for learning. One of the benefits of theological retrieval is it's just educational. If you're reading through Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica, you just are introduced to certain conversations. It forms categories, and there's just a lot you can learn. But I think the more interesting ones are the second two. So, when you travel, or especially if you live abroad for a season of time, it changes the way that you look at the world. It shapes your values a little bit. It gives you a little bit more perspective on your own culture. And sometimes it draws attention to assumptions that you have that you didn't even know you have. And I think theological retrieval can be like that. It's a way to draw attention to things that you were assuming that you didn't even know that you had. So St. Anselm, for example, his great question that he addresses in one book is, how can a just God forgive sin? And that's a question that he's really exercised by. For a lot of modern people, it's the exact opposite question that we have is, how could God not forgive sin? How could God ever judge? How could a loving God ever judge someone? And whatever you might make of Anselm, it's helpful to know that the questions we have aren't necessarily the questions that other people have had. And it humbles you a little bit to realize, functioning in the modern West, we have some assumptions that we tend to take for granted. And theological retrieval is one way just to broaden us a little bit in our thinking and help us to question some of the starting points that we have. And then I also talk about it as like going to a counselor. When you go to a counselor and you're having conflict with a friend or something like that, you get an outside perspective and you get an objective perspective. And I think theological retrieval can function a little bit like that. Sort of like if, before the modern era, you really didn't have a conservative versus progressive spectrum, with all the sociological pressures that go with that, depending upon where you live and who you interact with. When you go back to the early church, you might find someone who doesn't really fit in anywhere today. And it's a great way to get perspective on some of the conflicts we have. And sometimes that can help open up avenues of rapprochement, where we can have a both-and mentality to an issue where previously we had more of an either-or mentality. Sometimes it can help us say, actually, these two things are at least in some ways complementary. So I think there's incredible value in doing theological retrieval today.